going on, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in. We're here with our first full episode, and it's going to be a discussion between Ryan and I, and I'm super excited to have this discussion, to bring it to you guys and learn a little bit more about you. I thought we could start by having you share when you knew, or maybe the thing that occurred that sent you on the journey into becoming embodied and becoming an embodiment coach in a sense. Was there one particular instance or moment in time, or did it gradually develop? But I'm super curious because I don't know that about you, and it's such a beautiful part of what you bring into the world.
Thank you, brother. Love the question. And following the path of embodiment, as I mentioned at the intro, if you watch that there's 5 areas that make up whole human. So when you say embodiment, I think of encapsulating those 5 areas, like the physical, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. So when did I start becoming aware of that? Because my background, the first thing I did when I was going down a path of one of those areas was physical. I was a personal trainer, like fresh out of high school. That was the path that I went down. I got very burnt out in that space. It was very superficial. I think many of you know or have experienced this before, that being fit doesn't often mean that you are well or even healthy. And I found myself in that place where I was fit, but I wasn't well. I didn't feel good. So I often bring this up, that change comes from either desperation or inspiration. And for me at the time, it was definitely desperation. I looked good in my body, but I did not feel good on the inside. Like if you looked at me from the outside, you're like, oh, you're like an athletic looking dude. You're very capable, all these, positive attributes, but I didn't feel good about myself. So out of desperation, I actually started going down the path of looking at what it meant to actually feel good. Like, how do I explore that? Because I didn't necessarily see it in my family. I didn't necessarily have that mentor or that person to show me what it meant to look and feel good. So it was an exploration. I traveled the US for a while. I got odd jobs, which we can get more into that. But it left me finding mentors, finding people. And they were usually like the oddballs. They were usually the person that like stood out and people wouldn't necessarily connect with, and they would be almost outcasts or outliers. But I was always drawn to those people. And through that, I met some amazing humans that I just got little nuggets of wisdom from, little areas of, okay, maybe a little bit of this, a monk that I met, this meditation practice, where he said on the meditation that his facility did, the actual spikes on the cactus fell off because the cactus didn't need the spikes anymore of protection. I'm like, is that real? Can we do that? And so I started getting interested about that path of the mindfulness path. And that took me to Bali, as you know. And with that, then I started meeting more people that were kind of bridging areas, that were jacked, but then also did breath work and had meditation practices and were really loving people. Or they were people that have had amazing pursuits in business and were extremely wealthy, but then were really able to just connect with any person on the street or anywhere and had just an infinite amount of love, it seemed. And they were really humble. And you wouldn't know that if you met them, of what they've been through and what they had. They didn't show it and flaunt it. And I think that got me inspired. That just got me interested. For anybody who's been to Bali, you'll start to meet these people that come from around the world. And Nosara, where we live, is kind of like that too, where you start to meet people that have brought certain areas together that in the Western world are otherwise separate. Like you either are successful in business, or you're an athlete, or you're somebody who is into like Eastern practices and you meditate, but there's like separate categories and areas. So I just started exploring that and getting interested in that. So it's a long-winded way of saying, out of desperation of feeling compartmentalized in how I had to be as a boy entering manhood, I started breaking those boxes and being like, oh wait, I can pull a little bit of that wisdom. Oh wait, there's a little bit of thing there. Oh, let me see that. And then start to just explore it all and have just insatiable curiosity. I think that that was the best thing for me as an autodidact, which is a self-learner, as I didn't go to college. I wanted to gather wisdom from people that I met and see how I could find, now I know, which is just exploring the potential of being whole.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I feel like there's a few things I want to touch on, but it's like you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've had that experience like through dance, through ecstatic dance, having started to go pretty religiously for the last 2 years. And I didn't know how my body could move and how much more free I could be and these things and until I was immersed in it. And I wasn't desperate, but I was curious. And then I got into it and then suddenly I'm like, wow, I wanna dive more into this. And we can do that in all the facets of what it means to be a human. And the motivation, desperation is certainly one, or curiosity. Uh, when you say you were desperate, did you feel like depressed? Because I think it'll help for the people listening, like that are wanting to expand themselves. How did that manifest? Like, what were you feeling?
I think that desperation came from this challenge I had in my youth. There were many different sets of challenges, but one was in my speech. I had a speech impediment until probably 21 years old. From as early as I can remember, I had an impediment in my speech. And so if I didn't feel confident in my voice, which was for most of my life, I often didn't speak up. I often didn't share to the depth that I actually could. I often just limited myself in social scenarios or opportunities. I would kind of limit. I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, man. Let me just agree and let me just go along with it versus speak up and say what I know I need to say." So I think that just gave myself this image of, and I think we all to some extent have the I'm not enough in some area, but for me, it was I'm not smart enough. And that, like, that story just like was a thread through my life because nobody in my family went to college. So it wasn't a thing that we did. Never thought of my family as being educated people necessarily. And I didn't think of myself as that. So then this story of I'm not smart enough, just in the background, this little voice back there, when something would start to go right, I would be like, oh, don't say too much because you're impediment, you're going to look stupid. All of these things would come through. So I think it was this exploration with boundaries in a sense of like, yeah, I'm curious, I'm going forward, but I'm still going to do it in a kind of safe way because I don't want to be fully seen. Because if people fully see me, they're going to see that I'm stupid, I'm not educated, I don't speak well, whatever it is. And so I think it came from that, like, this deep desire in myself to be seen, but then also not wanting to be seen at the same time, which is like this duality. And it's paradoxical as most things are, but that was the desperation of like, how do I become fully expressed while also being scared to fully express? And that's the journey.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe you kind of reached a tipping point. Like it was boiling up, and
Uh-huh.
it was maybe creating like an unease, and you're like, I want to not feel this way. That's the desperation. And you did, I know this, that you did
Yeah.
Toastmasters. Can you share a little bit about, like, to me, that was that kind of the first real action you took?
Yeah. So in my early 20s, like it's 20, I think it was 2021, the speech impediment actually shifted a mushroom journey. It's very interesting because Paul Stamets also had a similar experience where he, if you've heard his story, he had some sort of impediment. And then during taking mushrooms, he had it shift through realization. And of course, I didn't hear that at the time. I don't even know when he first publicly shared that. I heard it maybe 2 years ago now. But when I was like 2021, I was deep in a mushroom journey and had this moment where I was talking in my mind perfectly. I was like, wait, I can't speak like that outwardly. Why can I talk like that in my mind? And then the wisdom just came through of like, you can. It's actually a choice. Your speech impediment is a choice. It's not true. It's not the truth. And so in that moment, it's like, okay. And I accepted that in that journey. And then my impediment went away. That didn't mean I instantly became like authentic. And I was like, yeah, cool. I'm confident now. But my impediment never returned in the same way since that day, which is incredible. But I started Toastmasters when I got to Bali, which is when I was 21 and terrified. Man, like if any of you have done Toastmasters, it's the biggest public speaking organization in the world. It's been going on since I think like 1950s, and it's the largest organization. It's in every continent, it's everywhere, and it's how to become some of the best public speakers. Like anybody that does a TEDx or any TED conference usually goes through a Toastmasters pathway. I remember the first time I got on stage, I went because somebody dared me to go. And then the person called me on stage, which was my coach at the time. He wanted to call me out and up and just step into something, even though I said I'm not getting on stage that day. I got on stage. I just got up there and I blacked out. Like my vision just went boom, and then closed. And I think I said a half a word. I was like, thanks. And that was like, man, I don't remember what happened up there. And people cheered. And then I walked back to my seat, just red, sweating. And I remember in that moment, I'm like, that is the scariest thing I've ever experienced. So I'm going to come back every week. And I went back every single week, terrified, less terrified over time, but still the experience was there. And over time, I think it was like 2 years in, I became the president of that Toastmasters club. So I just worked my way up through just being persistent with the thing that I was uncomfortable with and realized, oh, I can create something from this, and being honest with my experience through it. But damn, that was a tough journey. Those of you who have fear of public speaking would know it's, for a lot of people, it's the biggest fear, like bigger than death for many people. And that was my first kind of experience with it. And then years down the line with Toastmasters, it's an awesome practice. I highly recommend it to people that do have that fear because it's free. You can do it anywhere in the world, and really push the edges and got me actually seeking discomfort, like going into it and be like, oh, I don't want to do it. And like, let's go there. Let's go where I don't want to go. And then that started becoming something I was interested in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say, or first you can do a mushroom journey.
Yeah,
and
just do that.
and we're not promoting the use of that. Are we allowed to?
Plant medicine?
Yeah.
It's
No,
medicine.
I mean, I support it.
Okay, but we don't promote it.
We're not actively
Unless we get a sponsor that's
accepting it. Thank you. I want to touch on stepping into discomfort. You said it. I was thinking it before you even said it, but I think through your story, it's coming up, especially early on, and I'm sure you still are. And I found with myself and going back to static dance, it was not comfortable for me to go in the beginning. And there's so much to be said about stepping into discomfort. And there's this quote that I love, something to the effect of success in life is measured by the amount of difficult conversations you have. And I think of difficult conversations as uncomfortable.
yeah.
And I think it's so true. Like if we just sit back and kind of see that thing that's scary to us, it's going to remain there and it'll limit us. It's like puts us in a box a lot of times. And it's the human condition. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think part of what we're trying to do here and through sharing our stories, through the conversations we're having, is motivating people to step into discomfort. I think it's such a huge part of becoming a whole human, right? So I would love for you to share, were there any tools or things that you said to yourself when you were like, I'm going to step back into that discomfort in order to continue to do that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head with discomfort being essential for exploring the idea of becoming whole. I think discomfort is essential for growth. In the tissue, in our muscle, we need discomfort. We need the tissue to tear before we build stronger. Like there's many examples we could go on with that. But there was this one time where I was maybe like 6 months into the Toastmasters journey. I was starting to explore breathwork because, like I said, I was in Bali at the time. That's where I did Toastmasters. So there's lots of like breathwork practitioners, meditators. You could throw a rock and hit a life coach. They're all there. So all the people with advice are there. But it's rare. It's okay to have advice, and that's very common to have words said. But the embodied people, like the people that actually didn't just read something and are repeating what they read, They are those people, and they are what they say. And one of these people that was in my life at the time was a sister. She was amazing for my speaking journey. And she brought me this insight, and it was nervousness is excitement without the breath. And so, put even more simply, that when we are nervous in our body physiologically, it's the same thing as excitement. It's the same thing, the same sensory experience, nervousness and excitement. It shows up the same way in the body. The heartbeat, maybe you have sweaty palms, maybe you feel a little bit jittery. What's missing? The breath. How do you shift awareness from one to the other? If you have nervousness, you're kind of shallow breathing up in the chest. If you're excited, you're deeper breathing, and you can shift from nervousness to excitement with a breath. And so that helped me when going on stage, especially when I became the president of the club, because I was like, I need to be the best speaker. Oh shit. I need to be the best one here. And having that shift when I would be nervous, like, okay, I can actually shift this into excitement. Like, this is excitement. And I could name that and claim that and breathe into that and then be like, cool, I'm excited for this. And so that was one little tool. But the best thing I extracted from that is that breath can change our state. Breath can give us access to something that maybe the mind couldn't in that moment. And so I started going down the path of breath work. And it got me very interested in, like, what are little breath practices I can try? And this thing that I've done my whole life, breathing, how do I make it a tool? How do I make it something that can benefit me? How do I utilize it? And I got into other things like altered states, flow states, as I talked to you before, and even like transcendental practices and DMT releasing breath work and all the things. But the more simplistic, the better along that journey of seeking discomfort, doing hard things. When we come back to the breath, those hard things become easier. And so that was one example of that little nugget of wisdom stuck with me. Like, it stuck with me for years, and I still use it to this day. When I feel a bit nervous, I'll do a little bit of breath, just a few, and then it'll just drop me into, oh, actually, I can be excited right here, because that's the same thing in the body. So just that little shift using breathing.
I love it. I'm so picturing. I love your metaphor of you could throw a rock and hit a life coach.
Dude, so true.
It's so funny. And I just pictured a life coach getting hit in the head with a rock. Sorry. But I don't know if anyone else out there flashed into your mind's eye. Breath is so amazing. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure we're going to have several episodes just dedicated to different breathing practices, but that's a great practice for stepping into discomfort. And one of the things that popped up is the more we do that through a very actionable tool, like diving into your breath, tuning in, the easier it gets, right? Like, it might be hard for a while. It's certainly going to be hard if you never try. And then I found for myself, and maybe you could speak to this, that the more you do it, the more you step into that discomfort, you kind of see it. And now it's not this big, scary thing. It's just like, oh, there you are. I'm coming in. Like, let's go. And you almost seek it out. It sounds like that's what you were doing.
So true. It's just repetition, right? I think about this where you're way more skilled than me in surfing. Like, if there's a big swell and we're here and we're paddling out, your confidence in that swell is just, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to get out. Like, it's going to be easy. And I'm still, there's moments where there's big sets coming and I'm like, oh, can I duck dive this? Or do I have to ditch the board? And that is repetition. Like, I imagine at some point, waves were intimidating to you. You've transcended that. Or they never were.
They were.
Okay. But yeah, so I noticed just the practice of intentional repetition. Because I think this, like, practice doesn't make perfect. I think you probably heard this, like, practice makes perfect. And through many conversations with people, it's just not true. Like, practicing something doesn't make perfect. But if you intentionally practice and you reflect on how you're practicing and then learn from that and then move forward, you can get to a place of mastery or a place of evolution. But it's not just repeating something gets to perfection. So that's why I say intentional repetition, because it is that. It's like, okay, I'm paddling out. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay. And it takes the board. It's like, okay, come back to the breath. Okay, I'm feeling a bit more calm. And then go back to the beach, reflect. How was that for me? And then go back to it. It's the same thing when I was going on stage. It's like I go on stage. Oh, this was hard. Oh, I slipped up. Oh, no. Okay. After, reflect on that. Not just keep doing the thing, but go into it intentionally. Like I'll literally paddle out when it's big and be like, okay, it's big. I'm going to get overwhelmed and I'm going to see if I can find my breath and see if I can be calm on being tossed around underwater. Let's see how calm I can be. That's a fun game. Let's see how calm I can be on stage. That's a fun game. Let's see how calm I can be in interaction with a stranger. That's fun. And so, how do I gamify these things with intentional practice? I think that's an extended way of answering that, but that like, intentional practice and repetition. And as you probably have experienced, I do like to involve play into a lot of these things because why not? And it's also shown that you're able to learn things up to 200 times quicker if you're in play when doing something hard. And kids know that. They do that really well, but we kind of lose that as adults. And I think if we can bring that in, that intentional practice just starts embedding into our body better because it's like, okay, I'm not taking it too seriously. This doesn't crumble my identity when something goes wrong. It's like, okay, how can I learn from that? How can I pivot? How can I do improv with that? Chase and I have done improv a couple times together, and
Yeah.
that's life wisdom is doing improv. But I digress a bit. It is about that repetition, but the intentionality, I think, is the real gem in that.
I love it. I want to ask you about play, but first I want to mention we were talking about a mutual friend now. You're just getting to know him, but a friend of ours, and he named his son Piper, and he named it Piper. This is Chris.
Oh, yeah.
And his son's name is Piper, and Piper stands for perpetual incremental progress eternally repeated.
Oh, what a name.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he had been saying that he loved that acronym, and it just made me think of that not striving for perfection and the repetition, but just thinking about these things, stepping into discomfort. You don't have to just fully go in, and to go with the surfing metaphor, and paddle out, but maybe you just go and you go waist deep, and it's just incremental. But if you do it perpetually, right, and you're going to have those incremental changes, and I think it's more realistic and not as daunting.
It's
Yeah.
exposure therapy.
Yeah.
Right. That's what they would call it in psychology. Is like, how do you have a better relationship with it slowly
Yes.
over time? Just closer, closer, closer till you're in the thing. And you're like, oh, wait, I'm doing it. Just incremental exposure, but intentionally.
Yeah.
Wow. What a name.
Piper. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So let's talk about play.
Yeah.
One of the things, one of the many things I love about you is the playfulness, because I mentioned it on our first episode, but I grew up very competitive, and there's a lot of underlying things that we'll dive into in a future episode. But playfulness is like, to me, like the antidote almost, because I think anyone listening that identifies as being like hyper competitive, it's not fun because it's never enough. It's never good enough. And playfulness, to me, it's hard to be like in that, cutthroat mentality and be playful. And it's such a valuable thing, and to move through life with joy and play. So can you share how that entered in? Were you always that way? Did you cultivate it? I'm sure it's a little bit of both, but maybe your journey with playfulness, and then we'll talk about like how people can introduce it into their lives.
Yeah. Love play. Yeah. So growing up, I didn't really play often around my father in particular. He's not a playful man, as a lot of men are actually, but especially of a later generation. It just was not a masculine attribute, right? To be playful. And you had to have things in a certain order, and you had to be a certain way. And it often meant there was more aggression, probably because of suppression and not allowing expression, as I like to say. And so my dad was one of those people that I would not see him play. I don't think I've seen that man play a day in my life. And with that, he was my example of what it meant to be a man. And my older brother was also an example of, but just a few years older, but he's not a playful guy. In his heart, he is. I know his truth, but externally, he's not. He's very serious, almost stoic in the way that he shows up in the world. And so those are my examples. And I think many boys would have that experience of their father growing up, is that they'd see the example of the man and supposedly the man I'm supposed to be. This is what it means to be a man. And so I didn't have a playful example, that's for sure. So I thought I wasn't supposed to play. So I would really suppress that part of me. And it would come out. It would mostly come out. I was a club promoter when I was about 15. Little known fact about me.
Before you can get into the clubs legally, promoting
I
them.
was promoting. I was drinking. I was in that scene pretty early. And so there I would allow myself to drink and dance and play. But only would I dance and actually be in that playful attitude if I drank. It was my permission slip, right? And I think we all have different permission slips, and often it is with substance. For me, it was alcohol. I was like, okay, I love to dance, but I would never do it sober. It's like, I'll get drunk and then I'll get on the table and dance. I'll be that guy, but I have to be drunk for my expression to come through. That was my slip of permission. I probably stopped drinking when I was 20. I was over it by the time I was 20. I was like, I don't like this. It doesn't feel good for me the next day. But then I still wanted to navigate, okay, how could I be in expression? And how could I, be in the place of being playful? Once I was out of the house, I was navigating the world. I met enough men that were in that kind of playful attitude. And if you know me now, you know me to be at ecstatic dances, playing all the time, dancing all the time, and it's a sober space. But that evolution slowly unraveled through experiencing different things, traveling to Bali, as I mentioned. But yeah, it came in different ways. And I think it really was just dropping my guard and dropping the perception of what I had to do to be a man. And I think that made me a better man and made me the man who I am today, which is a man that can play and someone who can be sovereign, someone who can show up and be really present with somebody and deep and love somebody and show up for them. And it doesn't often have to be serious. And I've come to experience that and realize that this playfulness is just innate in all of us, as you would see in nature, as Alan Watts would talk about, like this is all play. Even the work we do, everything we do can be play. And I think just realizing that, it's almost, I didn't have to learn it. I had to like unlearn things to let that happen. I had to just remove, oh, I'm supposed to show up in a certain posture in a certain way, and I need to be perceived like this to be respected. It's like, oh, actually, maybe not. Like maybe playfulness is actually a vulnerability. And maybe a vulnerability is actually an invitation to being even more respected because it's real. And how real can I be is actually the exploration. And so to answer your question, it's like this removal. It's taking off layers of what I thought I needed to be a man, for the examples that I had growing up. Be like, wait, if I look at how those men live, I don't want to live like them. So why would I try to mimic their actions and be like them? And so it's like, great, what is a good man? What is an expressed man? What is a loving man? And, I continue to walk that path and explore what that is, but damn sure that man plays. So I play every day.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. It's infectious too. I mean, play is infectious. That's why I love being around you, and it's playful. And I do agree that it's within all of us, and we have all the baggage and the models that we were given and why we shouldn't do that. How can someone cultivate it if they're not around someone? Because to me, when I'm around you, I'm like, all right, I'm playing. Like we're gonna play, but it's not necessarily supernatural for me. So is there like a practice, or to me, it's a mindset definitely that you could share?
Yeah, for sure. I think play is way more accessible than many people think. It doesn't have to be this like childlike, like over the top, like ridiculous somatic play. Play can be curiosity. Like I often say this when I do breathwork journeys with people, is to play through it. And I know for some people that's difficult to think about, because like, wait, no, this is hard. Maybe there's trauma that comes up, or no, like this thing is sad. And it's like, yeah, playing doesn't take away the sadness. It doesn't take away any expression of other emotion. Like play isn't just excitement. Play can simply be an openness, an exploration, an ability to let yourself not know. Because it's so often that we need to know. It's like, I need to know the thing. I need to know the right way. I have the answer. I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. It's like we're floating on a rock, middle of space. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And just even just accepting that as play. It's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. What could happen? Like what could occur? And so that's more of the mindset part, like you said. I mean, play, like introducing it every day could be just letting go of something that you feel like you need to do or need to show up as. I do it in my morning practice most mornings, where instead of doing a very strict meditative practice, which I'll often have, but then I'll have a moment of even just 5 minutes where I'm shaking, I'm moving, I'm just like, like let myself be silly. Like actually just let myself, like, what if I just move and explore what does my body need, which is actually going to be my tool that I'm going to bring into this episode, which is going to be somatic shaking. So I think, a very simple place to start is something like that. Like, do you feel okay not taking yourself seriously? And that could look like a somatic shake, which often people are like, can I do this? And it's like, yeah, I can. And you can get into it. It's like, of course you can. Like you're an able body and you can let yourself be in any level of expression. And people that are rigid often don't let themselves kind of loose and soften. Spinal waves is something we've done for a while.
Working on mine.
He's
Getting there.
Getting it, fluid. So yeah, there's so many different ways it can show up in the body, but it can just be that openness of creativity, throwing a pen on the paper, closing your eyes and not needing it to be something in particular. I've worked with artists, and Michael Schulteis, who's a client of mine, and I'm sure we'll have him on the podcast one day. He often does this with adults. Close your eyes, piece of paper, draw. Don't look, don't peek, just let it be. And then in 2 minutes, look at the paper. How was that? Did you feel tense and, I need this to be a certain way? Or did you notice you let yourself kind of just go and not need it to be a certain way? The layering and the shedding of the I need it to be a certain way is play. The ability to just, okay, let me just see what happens here. Creatives have access to this very easily, but many people, it could just be dropping that layer. Where is your layer? I don't know which of the areas, right? That's the 5 areas we talk about. Maybe yours is physical. So the somatic shake is going to be awesome, but each area is a little bit different. And it's just the invitation of being curious, like to not act like you know and to let something unfold. I'm always surprised by like, I thought I knew. And then I was like, let me just let that go for a second. And then something greater than anything I could have thought up or forced to come to life occurred. So yeah, it can be that simple little bit of curiosity.
Amazing. So many fun practices. I want to do the close your eyes and
let's
draw.
go.
I want to transition a little bit and start talking back to the whole human story and your journey. And we were in Bali, and you're doing Toastmasters. And as you've shared, I haven't been to Bali, but they have a lot of facilities there, and it's very much in the air as it is here in Nosara, but like there's self-help, self-development in a lot of different areas, right? The areas we talk about. And surely that was inspiring to eventually start this movement that we are now doing here. So can you share a little bit about how Bali influenced you, and maybe that it was before Bali, if there's anything there, and how it ended up here on the verge of a whole human facility here in Nosara?
It first occurred when I was in high school. As I said, I was club promoting. So I was interested in kind of the social side of like getting people together, even though, it wasn't the healthiest thing we were doing, but it was at the time what I had access to. I also did that with a few friends with the gym. I got really into the gym when I was like 14. And with that space, the gym started becoming like a refuge for me. It started becoming a safe place because there were some places I didn't feel safe. And so I was like, okay, we'll meet up here and I invite all my friends. We have a group of like 10 guys in the gym and just be like gym bros, didn't know what we were doing, teenagers, like
But
I'm
me.
gonna max out every day. And so in the, in the like not knowing what we're doing, we were still meeting up and we were still spending time together. And even though you could say it was an egoic pursuit of, flexing, getting stronger, there was still a aspect of growth. And we're interested in growing together. And this is in hindsight, how many areas started shifting around us. We're like, cool, like I'll make dinner tonight. Everybody, let's get steaks because we want protein. And so we're eating cleaner. And they're like, oh, let's not drink this week because we want to make gains or whatever it is. It's like we're actually cutting out things that weren't serving us to become better, even though, it was a shallow pursuit in many ways. But then that wisdom kind of followed me. And that's why I stopped drinking when I was 20. So I was like, this is not helping me in any way about what I want to become. And so when I traveled to Bali, I found these other facilities that were, part gym, but then they would have like cold plunge and sauna. And then they would have meditation classes and yoga. And then they would have like co-work next door. And I was like, oh, like the people that I will co-work with and did Toastmasters with, because we do those at co-working spaces that are pushing themselves to be better speakers, better performers, or just have more confidence. We'll also go train together. And then we'll also go in the cold plunge and push ourselves. But then we'll also go to a yoga class and just relax together. And then we'll go to the cafe and like sip bone broth and hang out. And I'm like, whoa, look at all these areas. It wasn't under one roof. There were a few different places. But this, this seedling of an idea and a desire to really create a space for social wellness. As I mentioned, that's what whole human is. It's rooted in social wellness. Because if I look back at any piece of my growth, I mentioned like the repetition and being conscious about it and having accountability. I think the biggest thing was accountability with another, or being called out by somebody like the coach that called me out to come up on stage, or like the people that I knew in the gym because we all held each other accountable, or the person that made it really challenging for me to live where I was in Florida. So then I had to leave. It wasn't the best experience, but it turned into, oh, this is a great opportunity. It came through relating. Like it was all a relationship thing. As you know, as somebody who hosted the relationship podcast, every time I grew, it wasn't just with myself in isolation. Like the healing, the growth happened in community. It happened in relationship to someone. And that was always the case. And so I looked back and I was at this facility in Bali, like, oh, I'm going to go a little bit longer in that cold plunge because some of my buddies with me. Or I am going to show up to that yin yoga class, even though I'd rather be doing stuff, but we said we would go to it. So let's do it. Let's nourish our bodies. Or I'm going to go to this Vipassana retreat, which I did. 10 days of silence, isolation, no speaking. I wouldn't have done that if there was nobody holding me accountable to it. But I went with a good friend and we went together. I was like, wow, my growth has not come with myself for myself. It came with others for others. And we got to do that together. And that's made me whole. That is actually what has been my path. And that's why one of the 5 areas is social, because I really feel like the wellness journey is often, and for men in particular, one of, I'm going to do it myself. Like I got it figured out. I'm going to do my practices. I'll go to this retreat or I'll do this thing. But we usually get to a place of realizing, oh wait, I need to be held by another brother. Like the experience that I've had in the past 2 years, which we could share, I needed to be held by you. There were some moments that like, I can't do this, man. Like I'm too overwhelmed. I'm doing too much. I'm caregiving too much. I just have too much going on. And sure, I could have bypassed it, but it would have turned to illness later, or I would have gotten burnt out later. But I needed a brother like you to just be with me and actually cry. I remember crying with you on the phone, just being in that expression. And if not for you, I don't know that same expression would have came through, even though this is the work that I do. Would I've given myself that permission? So the permission slip thing that I said earlier about alcohol, has really shifted to how can I be a walking permission slip? And how can I get permission from people like you, people in my life that I love and care about? And how can we do that together and help each other grow and become whole together? So these experiences in Bali, seeing the facility, right? That's the practical, that's the tangible, that's the building, that's how it was structured, being inspired by that. But then I saw there was still a missing piece. It's like the intent, the deep intention of these places to really bring people together, to call them out, call them up and into love while also challenging each other. It's like, how do we do that? How do we navigate these dualities that are often separate into one place? And so Whole Human has been with me for a long time. This name has been with me for a long time. This vision since I was young at the gym. I always knew I wanted to own a gym one day because of that. I was like, I want to own a facility that we can come bring all my friends. So it was there as a seed. But then as I grew, I was like, oh, it's not just a gym. The gym was just what I knew. That was what was available. But what if it was a whole hub? What if we could come and show up every day with the community, and here in particular, because we have Costa Ricans as well, and like bridge community, bridge the inner experience and the outer, bridge these parts that are usually separate and just come together in real ways to show up, to push each other, to nourish each other, to love up on each other, to work together, literally in co-work and in many ways, these projects that we get to co-create. But how can we really be with each other? Because there's this really interesting kind of study that I've been diving into a lot recently, which is sociogenetics. And we talked about this, but it's literally how our gene expression changes with the people we spend time with. And it just blew my mind because it said, you are the 5 people you spend time with, but here's now the study of how the people we spend time with actually impact us more than our parents. This one study in particular was saying with obesity that your parents, if they are obese, you're 30% more likely to be obese. It's like, okay, yeah, I can see that. If your friends are obese, you're 170% more likely to be obese. It's like, okay, I can really see that because it's who you're spending time with. It's the habits you're taking on. It's the places you're going. It's what are you doing together? What are you talking about? What are you creating together? And then that inspires me even more to, okay, how do we create together in the model of literally our genetic expression can change if we're being and showing up fully for each other, especially in the time where the online world, the way AI is going, the way everything is going, there's more disconnection than ever, more isolation than ever, more sickness than ever. Like I could go on a tangent on that alone, but how do we come back together? How do we come back to ourselves, actually come back to ourselves and do that with other people and know we're not alone in this journey? So there's a long-winded way of sharing about Whole Human, but you can tell it's really deep in my heart. And it's been with me since I was a teenager. And it's just evolved and blossomed to now be in Nosara, Costa Rica, which I came here during the pandemic and realized this is home. And I've never lived in a place that was home. I've traveled the world. I went to Bali, as I said, and tried to figure it out, but it never felt like home. And I came here and I knew, I was like, this is home. And so this is where it's going to happen. This is where it's going to come to life. Yeah.
So excited for this project, and thank you for that journey. It's beautiful that you had it and that you have that in you, and it's a longer discussion, but I think we have these innate qualities inside of us, and then there's qualities we can develop, and seems like it was just in you, this desire for community and building, and it's already happening. We've mentioned the weekly ecstatic dance, and I just feel like that is such a great example, and one that will eventually be at Whole Human, of the community, of expressing yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually. Really, all of the bodies are being expressed there, and how fulfilling it is. Like, I don't go every week to dance. I mean, I do, and we dance and we rub up against each other, and
So sweaty. Yeah.
so sweaty. Lots of that. I'm gonna say Ryan and I rub up against each
Not
other a
against
lot.
everybody.
Not everybody.
Yes.
it's for the people. It's for the connection. And I love moving my body and that, but it's such a potent thing. And I didn't really have that in my life in Nosara before, not cultivated in that sense. And so it's such a beautiful thing that's already happening. And I can't wait for this broader project to come to fruition, and the adventure club and all the things that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, it's the permission slip.
Yeah.
It's that, I guess I mentioned the alcohol was that. Now the ecstatic dance is that in many ways. And just to touch on this, because you mentioned building community, how it's innately there. Growing up, I didn't have that in my family system. Like, so there's a lot of people that I know that have roots, and my partner, she's Italian, so they have Italian like traditions, very tight family kind of grouping that they do, and they meet up for certain things and religious and holidays and all the things. And my family just doesn't have that. And so I didn't have ritual in my family. I didn't have consistent connection. We had one family reunion in my lifetime, and it was kind of a shit show. And so we didn't have this kind of regular check-in or connection time. And so again, desperation or inspiration, I didn't really have the inspiration to just bring it forward. I was desperate. I was like, I want this. I know what's possible in little ways. And so I think a lot of people know what's possible and maybe can't experience it yet, or they have had it in the past and want to see it and experience it. And we get a taste of that at Ecstatic, right? We get that regular check-in. It's literally Sunday morning, as many people would be going to church at that time most days. And people call it, some people call it like, this is not like Sunday church, because we come dance, connect, express, and be with each other every week, like a family meeting. And so this kind of idea of ritualizing experiences and connection, and I didn't have it growing up. So it's actually why it's drawn me more into it, because like, I want to create this thing, even though I didn't know it, I didn't have it. I can see what's possible if we do have that in our systems. And we are supposed to do that as human beings. We are tribal beings, and having ritual is so nourishing and gives us meaning beyond many other surface level things. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there because it was in me, because I didn't see it around me, that I needed to create it myself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And yeah, I'm so excited. It's already, like I said, it's already happening with this Sunday ecstatic dance. I want to talk about your journey with your partner and how that has informed who you are today. And as we come into whole human, and you mentioned it a little bit, but as much or as little as you want to share about that. And when I think of it, and I know intimately what's been going on in the journey, but I think, and from what you've shared, there's a very big, obviously emotional and spiritual component to that journey. So if you could share it with everyone, I know there's going to be a lot to learn and to help
Yeah.
people that are out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'll go into this at length, maybe in another episode where we can speak to this, because there's just so much here in this space of being a partner in this kind of journey and navigating something like this. So my partner, Lauren, was diagnosed with cancer just over 2 years ago. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's in her 20s. So she found this out, and we were in shock, of course, as anybody would be at any age, but especially with somebody, if you know her, you know that she is vibrant, you know that she is healthy in many, many ways, you know that she's a women's embodiment coach, you know that she has been healthy since she's 19 years old and following all the paths of nutrition, of movement, of spirituality, of many of these arenas. And yet she got diagnosed with something, and it's not genetic. It wasn't passed along. So where did it come from? You know, this unknown, this uncertainty. So this has been a 2-year journey. Well, 2 years and a couple months now, where she originally got diagnosed. And it was 5 months ago now that a recurrence occurred. And, you know, for one diagnosis to happen, it's hard. It's to even fathom that that's possible. And once you get something like that once, it's like, okay, this is now something I have to think about for the rest of my life. So that was hard. and she did the things necessary to take care of that. But then it recurred within a year. And that was devastation, even more heavy and challenging than the first time. It just had this weight. It's like, oh, wow, we did the Joe Dispenza meditations. We've done all of the immunotherapies. She's done the conventional medicine. She's done the visualization. She's done all of the things in the spaces and biohacking and areas. And yet it reoccurred. Okay, what is that? So the navigating of that space, and as I said, there'll be so much more to go into there, because navigating a life-threatening disease and to be a partner in that, I never planned to know what it would take to be a partner in that journey. And only when we went to this facility in Mexico called Oasis of Hope, which highly, highly, highly recommend for anybody who's navigating cancer and wants to know an integrative path, one that uses both alternative and conventional medicine together. After all the research, we found that place. They had a book for me when I got there, and it's called The Other Patient. And it was the first time that it kind of occurred for me that, oh, I'm navigating this as well. Like, the whole time it was about her and how can I show up for her and how can I caregive for her and what does she need and how much love can I just pour into her and just support, support, support. And then there was just this sinking of like, oh, I never looked at it like that. I'm the other patient. And there were many shifts that occurred since then. Actually, probably the day after reading that book is when I called you and I was overwhelmed. And that's when I cried. And I was just like, in the experience of, oh, this is hard for me too. And allowing myself to really feel that instead of bypassing. It's like, no, nothing matters in comparison to what she's going through. Nothing isn't as important as this. And so just to let that be felt, to be, the partner, to be the caregiver, to be the support in many ways, and sometimes even the coach, because that's what I do for a living. So I would just step into that role. And then to actually take a step back and be like, okay, what would love do? And Return to Love has been one of the greatest books of wisdom through this journey, as you've read and we've both read. Highly recommend. But just this idea of returning to love, not just for her, but for myself. It's like, okay, how do I continuously return to that space through something that we can't control? And no matter how much we want to control it and find the root cause of this thing and figure it out, it's actually seemingly, okay, how much can we return to love through this? That, if anything, is going to be the medicine. So it's deepened really with Whole Human, what I want to bring forward in the mission, because at Oasis of Hope, this place I mentioned, this is for people that have had cancer, oftentimes people that should have been dead months before. And then they come to this place as kind of just a last resort of like, save me. These people were the most present people I've ever met. And honestly, some of the most optimistic. And because they had a couple extra months on their life, they're like, I'm just grateful to eat breakfast together. We would have all our meals together. And the way that I could just feel their presence, and it seemed like every conversation was the most important conversation of their life. And it literally was in many cases. It just gave me a different perspective on what it meant to be alive, like what it meant to even be well, because they weren't well by many regards, but their love and their presence was beyond anything I could ever explain. Like their soul was coming through. They weren't worried about any quotas. They weren't worried about what they had to deliver next week in work or distracted by what's going on in the news, and they're like, shh, I am here with you right now. And this is the most important thing. Damn, how do I cultivate more of that without needing to learn it firsthand, without getting the life-threatening disease, right? And so it rooted in more to Whole Human. I'm like, okay, this is actually the place where people will come before that happens. That pre-cancer, that pre-death, that pre-overwhelm, and disease. It's like, where's that place that we go to actually show up for ourselves? Often it's called prehab, like prehabilitation training, where people come to do things before they get injured. It's like you're actually preparing so you don't get injured instead of rehabilitation later. So it's like a prehab for all five bodies. It's like, how do we show up for ourselves before we get to that place of, immense illness? Or if we're navigating it, how do we come back to ourselves and realize we are whole as we are? So it just deepened the mission even more. It's like, wow, we are increasingly sick. We are increasingly isolated, disconnected, addicted to things that are making us unwell. How do we come well? How do we become whole? This isn't an individual journey. This is a collective journey. So Whole Human just started rooting in more. I'm like, this is my purpose here. I want to build this. And through navigating this with Lauren, one-on-one with her family system being involved, of course, meeting these people that are also navigating cancer, just deepen what is more important. What is more important than love, truth, and presence? It's like, I don't know. Like, this is the most important thing that we could do here on earth. And back to what I was saying about play, even in that, like, you would think these would be like the darkest times. This would be the most heavy situations. And yes, there were many of those moments. And those people at Oasis of Hope were cracking jokes and were lighthearted and knew that at any moment, any day, they could pass away and it could be over. So like, okay, I'm also going to have a damn good time. Why not? And that's also inspiring. So it's a good reminder to being present and having perspective. These are the two P's I'm playing with this year, is the presence and perspective. How present can I be with each moment, each day, right now, while also having the perspective of, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Or I am so grateful that I get to be here with you right now and zoom out and be like, wow, all the things that led me here. What a gift this is. And so dancing between these two, having presence and then having perspective, I think is just a gift that I've received from these cancer patients, to be on this journey. And then also while building Whole Human, like being present with each moment and then realizing, zooming out, wow, this movement that we get to build is so important and we all need it. So there'll be a lot more to come on the cancer journey with my partner. There's a lot I could share there, but I think to encapsulate it, those are some of the nuggets that I've gained and how it's kind of interweaving itself into this mission and really deepening it. It's not just a facility to come train, to receive different care, to have co-working, to have these elements. Yes, that's the building, sure. But what is the heart of it? It's deepened so much in these past 2 years.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much so much there. We won't dive into all of it now, but just want to second that the power of the presence and perspective in community and social connection is such a huge thing. I'm sure anyone listening, going through things, we all do. I mean, this is life, and I've experienced realizations that when I'm alone and not having the support, it's so hard. And often, if you're just feeling unease or you're feeling sad and depressed, you want to maybe move your body, get in some sunlight, and work on your social connections or reach out to those people. And that's a big part of this movement, is having that community, having those social connections. That's actually, before we met, and I've told you this, but that was my big realization, having been in a 12-year marriage and then being single for the first time basically in my adult life, and then having gone through my first breakup and not really having any kind of social support. And my mission was like, I need to develop this part of my life, and then we became friends. It wasn't an accident. And so that just being such an important tool that I'm thankful for and so excited to be able to cultivate and help people built. So, man, we covered a lot,
Yeah.
and you did a really beautiful job of sharing your journey, a little bit of your personal journey and how that led to Whole Human and the vision going forward. Before we wrap up, are there any things that maybe we skipped over, or something that you want to emphasize about the the Ryan Miller experience leading into the Whole Human experience?
Mm. I think the biggest thing is seeking truth. This is one of the biggest realizations I had in the past couple of years is like, how honest can I be? And when I dig into that, it's what actually matters to me. Because it's so often we're just taken by what is occurring outside of us, what's happening politically, what's happening with this drama around me, what's taking my attention on social media, what is it? It's just happening outside of me. And then the ability to actually pause and to be honest with, wait, what do I actually care about? What will I actually look back at when I'm 80 and really be so grateful that I did the thing, even if it was uncomfortable, probably especially if it was uncomfortable, even if I risked having my heart broken, I risked being seen as stupid, that would be my story. What if I took that leap? What if? And when I take those moments to be in stillness and to reflect, and usually with people that I care about, not just with myself, but to be honest and to be truthful about how I feel about the people around me, like how much I care about you, Chase, like how much I love and appreciate you as a brother. And the fact that we can name that and talk about that and just be real about it instead of just like, hey, bro, good to see you. Fist bump, see you. Like actually go deep together. It's like, let's go deep. That's what matters to me. And that's me being fully honest and vulnerable. And if we go deep, I'm risking being seen. I'm risking you seeing my flaws, seeing these things. And it's worth it. Like it's fucking worth it. So if anything, it's just kind of putting that little cherry on top of let's go in together. Let's be seen together. Let's be silly. Let's be stupid. Let's be wild. Let's drop in and be vulnerable. Let's cry together. Let's be real. And so if we can just come back to that, and I try to do this every single day as much as I can in a playful way as well. I am curious. I am open. I'm open to tomorrow being very different than today, but with a little bit more honesty, a little bit more truth every day. And that just gets me closer to what it means for me to be whole.
I love it. What a beautiful way to wrap up this first episode.
Yeah.
So excited for future ones. And thank you so much. This was amazing. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're really excited for what's to come.
Yeah. And I'm going to have the tool. It's going to be separate than this, but I'm going to give a tool myself. As I said, every episode is going to have a takeaway, an experience. So I'll share one of my favorite practices. I think I already mentioned it's going to be somatic shaking. I'll guide that in a separate one. So look out for that tool so you can embody a practice that I use myself every day. But yeah, thank you so much, Chase. This is awesome. I love this.
Amazing. Thank you guys.
See you soon.